Well, good morning and welcome to another week on my allotment. And as is now becoming the norm, it's early Sunday morning. Another glorious weekend of weather, although that's set to change tonight, going over into tomorrow morning. So that's the main emphasis on the allotment today, is by the time I leave to have it frost proofed as much as I can, because tomorrow morning and the following morning the temperatures are going to be down around +1 to +4, and of course I've got a significant amount of delicate and susceptible vegetables in. So anyway, that's what I've got to do today at the end of the day, and I shall look to sort of work on that through the day. That the tomatoes are covered, the cold frames are locked down and there's no ventilation through them, and so on and so forth. Anyway, but that's today. I'm happy to report we had our first early crop of potatoes out of the tub that I sowed on the 7th of February. They were swift. It wasn't a large crop, but it was a very tasty crop, and we had the new potatoes with our salad, and they were fantastic. And I've said it before and I'll say it now, the satisfaction, you know, people say, oh, all this work and effort, the sheer physical labour, when you can just go in Tesco and buy a bag of potatoes. I can't really describe it. If you have a kitchen garden or you have an allotment, I don't need to tell you, but if you're watching and you don't, please trust me when I say the satisfaction, the warm glow I get as I empty the tub and sift through and find the potatoes, hand them to my wife, and she boils them up, and within half an hour of me turning that tub over and those potatoes being a living thing, we were eating them. And there's just no comparison to what you buy from the shop. So that was lovely. It's always a good idea to take stock and look at what you're doing, and you know, am I making any mistakes? And I always battle with the same problem, and that problem is having the patience to wait. So I think one of the things that I've learnt again is I go too soon. Maybe I sow, maybe not the sowing is the problem, because I sow either indoors or in the greenhouse, but I want to plant out, because by planting out it's signalling the beginning of the season, and of course I want the season to start, and I've made mistakes. So I think when I said the Benchmaster runner beans didn't germinate, and I still haven't had any Benchmaster runner beans germinate, I think I'm sowing them too soon. You know, they're a crop that you sow mid to the 3rd week of May, traditionally. You know, that's what my granddad did. Well, if my granddad did it, then it makes sense. And I'm trying to make that happen in early to mid-April. And of course, the other thing I've thought about since is we don't want to be eating runner beans in August. You know, we want to be eating runner beans in November, December, with our, you know, our winter hot dinners. So it doesn't make sense to try and grow them early. You're just trying to force nature, and you can't force nature. So that's the thing I've learned, that yet again, and I've done it every year since I've been here, it's in my nature. I just want to get on with things, and there's no point, you know, ease off, Martin, and just relax about it, and sow your runner beans mid to late May. You know, they would have caught up anyway. So yeah, that's something that I know, you know, it's a fault of mine, and you know, I need to work on it. Of course, having said that, you look around the plots, and we'll go and have a look about in a minute, is that other people have got runner beans that long growing outside, and you know, I don't know. The other thing, and it's not a fault of mine, I hope, is the amount of stuff I've lost. That I've lost all my gooseberry bushes, and there are about 10 of those. They're all dead. Maybe it was the flooding over the winter, I really don't know. But again, other people on other plots, their gooseberries are fine. Some of them are lower down, so they were just as flooded, if not more so. And I've lost all the raspberries, and I've mentioned that before. So we've had a significant loss. Cheryl's not bothered about gooseberries, I think. I love gooseberries. I love a gooseberry crumble. But she's fanatical about the raspberries. When I first moved here, 4 years ago or 3 years ago, Bridget said, don't bother growing raspberries, they don't grow here. Well, since then we've had some wonderful crops. However, my raspberries have now died. Other people on other plots have lost their raspberries. So, as always, or to my experience, she seems to be right. But, you know, we enjoyed the crops when we had them, so I don't regret it. So those are just a couple of things I'm dwelling on. Not quite sure where I'm going to go with the gooseberries and the raspberries. I guess I'm still leaving them. You know, I've got nothing else to go in that plot, so there's no point in ripping out the old canes, digging it over and preparing it, because I've got nothing to put in it. I've got more than enough ground for what I'm growing, so I've got all summer to think about that and to work out a strategy for next year. Anyway, that's enough on that. This again will be like the last one, where I've taken clips from all the way through the week, and we had another glorious walk yesterday, and I'll show you a few clips of that. I'm not sure how interested you are if you're watching this to see the allotment. I just think watching the clips, it's just therapeutic to me to see the beauty of the place we live. And you know, every area, wherever you live in the country or wherever you live in the world, every area has something to sell it. And I think at this time it's important to find that and to enjoy it and appreciate it. So I hope you enjoy a few of those clips, as I hope you enjoy the whole video. Welcome along.
All brown. Why is it all brown?
Well, because of the muddy, silty nature of the bottom.
Did it without falling over.
Well done.
Oh.
Any cold drink would be nice. Yeah. There's a shop and it's open. My goodness. It really is a beautiful village, Tinton.
Come on, old man.
You'll be pleased to know I'm not feeling this at all.
This was your idea. This is your route.
Yeah. Seemed like a good idea, sat in the living room looking at the map.
You alright, Mum?
No.
It's alright, there's a cafe just at the top of this hill.
I wish.
Unbelievable.
It's shut.
The cafe is in Dad's backpack.
Yeah, don't lose the backpack. Well, Charlotte is stood on the pulpit rock, from where legend has it the devil used to preach to the Cistercian monks down in Tinton Abbey to try and lure them away from the order. So the legend goes. but it's one hell of a view.
Now how do I get down?
Jump. I hope we drink the squash after an hour or so walking. Halfway. Second half to go. How are we feeling, ladies?
Great. Raring to go. Come on, Charlotte.
Comfortable now.
Now, wife, we've been walking over 4.5 hours. Could you update us on calories and steps, please?
22, nearly 23,000 steps. Oh, my heart rate's a bit high.
It's because you've just walked through a field of cows.
Done 138 flights of stairs. Oh, gone off. And nearly 2,000 calories.
Excellent. Well done. You've earned a little sit down. Just over 5 hours now, and we're on the outskirts of Chepstow. About another 45 minutes to go. Fantastic walk, beautiful. Loved every minute of it. Right, back to the allotment. Well, while it's nice and quiet and the wind hasn't picked up yet, because the wind is going to come down from the north and it's going to pick up quite steadily through the day, I thought I'd take the opportunity just to have a walk through the site with you. Now, this is Bridget's 3 plots, and I daren't walk through there with the camera with you, because if I don't concentrate and watch where I'm putting my big size 11s, I'll tread on something tender and loved. So I'm staying well out of it. But you can see she's put these bottles throughout the tomatoes, and I'm guessing, oh, in fact there's the bubble wrap and the fleece. Later today I'm guessing she'll be here and she'll be covering all this to protect it. So I think I'm going to pinch her idea with those upturned bottles to cover my tomatoes. But I have to say, the whole site is looking well tended. Absolutely stunning. It always raises the spirits when you know, I look after my plot and I do what I can with it, but it's always a pleasure when you're surrounded by other people that do that. So it's all looking very, very well tended, and it's a pleasure to see. Even Terry's finally found his way up the allotment, and now in his polytunnel he's got some really attractive tomato plants put in. John continues to fascinate and impress. I love just how meticulous and patient and thorough he is. And he's got himself a load of netting. Amazing what he can do with plastic bottles. And I can see there his potatoes. His potatoes were just starting to show their heads. In fact, let's have a walk through here. And so he's newspapered them and covered them to protect them. Good idea. I think John is single-handedly fighting a campaign of trying to keep plastic bottles out of our oceans. Oh, look at this. He's netted up. He was doing this the other day when I was here. He's netted up his black currants. Remarkable. His little flower patch. And I don't think he fits in that, but that's the play area for the grandchild. And then look, these are his raspberries. Could not look healthier. You know, I don't begin to understand fruits and vegetables, but how is it he's 30 yards away from me and his raspberries, which are as old as mine, could not look better, and mine are all dead. And then there is broad beans, and they are absolutely stoked with small beans. Fantastic. There's his French climbing beans and runner beans. Oh, that's his strawberries, netted up. Not quite sure how they get pollinated with the nets over them like that. And then these are another bed of potatoes that he's covered with a sheet of plastic. I'm assuming he's not coming up today then. Oh, and his carrots, he's even bagged them. Wow. So yeah, everything looks fantastic, although I have to say the exception to every rule, the plot next to mine. I've said in the past the chap is another John. He does the same every year. He turns up after he's paid his dues in February. He turns up March, April time. He puts in a spurt, and this year his spurt has been digging a 2-foot deep slit trench all the way around his plot. Don't quite understand the thinking there. He's almost covered. I say almost because it hasn't really. So he's dug out these slit trenches and piled up the earth, which is like concrete, on top of these bits of membrane. But the membrane isn't covering the plots, so the grass is growing through. And of course he used his huge burner to blacken his plot, and of course it's all grown back, as it does after a fire, grows back stronger and thicker. Anyway, each to their own. He pays his dues, and if that's what he wants to do with his allotment plot, that's his right. Just strikes me as a complete waste of an allotment. And here we are with yours truly. So I think without further ado, I'll go and give you a tour of the plot. Well, I'm going to do it slightly differently, from a different angle this time. But down here, I had an initial pick of rhubarb. For regular followers, you'll remember I forced, it was this plant here actually, I forced the rhubarb. And it was a gorgeous crop, and it was a lovely evening meal. And the rhubarb has not moved since. It doesn't move, and everyone's on the site is the same, and none of us are quite sure why that is. But you know, this should. When Terry gave me these plants, and the leaves were 2-3 feet across, and they were standing 4 foot high last summer, and here they are now, looking very weak and feeble. But it's just one of those funny years, I think. So I've got 2 courgettes over there in the blue tubs. Bridget's given me some butternuts when I wouldn't say no to a gift, so they've gone in. I've got black currants and blackberries along the back of the compost heaps. Thankfully they all look good, so I think the raspberry crop that we normally enjoy is going to be replaced by the blackberry crop this year. The beetroot looks superb, as do those onions, and more onions beyond. This is my Brussels sprouts bed. They all look okay at the moment. I'm hoping that fleece will be enough to protect them. They're a fairly hardy crop, aren't they? And then in the bed behind I've got the sweet corn that my daughter thought was tomatoes, and then the tomatoes, and they are definitely going to need some form of protection, so I've got to sort that out today. And then the garlic beyond. Then we come to the peas, and I've put a few onions in there just to use the ground that hasn't got peas on, but the peas all look healthy enough, and again they're going to have to stand on their own. Right, let's move in across my very attractive and practical slabs. And this piece of old trellis I had, I'm going to try and grow cucumbers up that. I may even put some salad leaves underneath it. The leeks appear to be okay actually. They're definitely growing on. Not a lot to see, not a lot of green there, but they're okay. And I'm growing more. These are the raspberries, summer raspberries that Bridget gave me. They really don't look well. I've been watering them like mad, but that's an investment in another year, so you know, I'll stick with that. And here we come to my Sarpomira, planted on the 25th of April, and already on their way up. So I'm either going to move them into the shed or more likely put a bit of newspaper in them just to protect them. Same problem here with my sweet peas. They're tiny little plants and they just do not move. But there you go. And then there's a bed of dead gooseberries. Some shallots and onions still working their way over there. Another bed of brassicas, and that's mixed, so it's calabrese, broccoli, cauliflowers, and then green and red cabbage. My little flower tubs seem to be developing nicely. Some of the strawberries look really good. And these strawberries, all of these in this bed here, were what I inherited on the plot. Now, I inherited this plot 4 years ago, and I have no idea how old they were. So if I get any strawberries off of them, I'm doing well. This bed up here are what I've propagated since I've been here. So except for the far right hand row, that is the last row I need to remove and put in new runners. And here we go with my broad beans. Brought the string up today to tie them in. I'll take you over to show you the pond because I'm really pleased with how that's looking. As with everything, you know, things mature. You know, and I've got nettles in there, I've got docks. There's 3 lilies over there. I think I planted them, I can't remember. And every day I come up here, I find lily beetles on them. And they meet a nasty end. But the lilac, the weigela that I've brought from our garden, they all look fantastic, as does the pond itself. Very happy with how that's looking. And then an old clematis which didn't grow at home and doesn't appear to be going very far up here. It just stays about 3 feet off the ground and doesn't move, and it's doing the same up the allotment. I don't understand. But this blackberry has grown up along this shed, following the guttering, around the shed and out towards the end. I'm loving that, and looks like I'm going to get a fairly decent crop off it. And then to the working area. Yeah, I'm very pleased with it all. And here's the seedling factory. And I think the beetroot and the leeks are going to be okay. I'm not going to worry about them. That's some New Zealand spinach and some nasturtiums. I might protect them a bit. And then here's where I do need to do a bit of work. These are my butternut squash on the left, my cucumbers in the middle there, and then some tomatoes, and they'll need to be protected, as will the courgettes and the French beans, the dwarf broad beans, and more tomatoes. So as the sun peers above the cloud and starts to warm the day ahead, I'm very pleased with how the plot is progressing. Oh, and there's my alderman peas. They are a success story. They are really moving. Trying to get up to the 6 foot mark. Yeah, very happy. Now, it's 6:15 and I have not had a brew yet, so I'm going to go and correct that. Well, while I do my pyromania bit with the Kelly kettle, the allotment flamethrower, as I like to call it, I'd like to give you a 2-for-1 offer, and that being about the origin of phrases. And I'll start with how you let the cat out of the bag, which is a phrase that we use to say that, you know, given away a secret or told people something you shouldn't have, whatever. We all know what it's used for. To let the cat out of the bag. Back in medieval times at food markets, farmers and growers would sell piglets, and the piglets were either used, you know, they would sell them live, and they would be taken home by the buyer and either slaughtered and eaten for meat, or would be, you know, grown on and still used for meat later on, poor thing. Anyway, piglets were not cheap, so while the farmer was negotiating with the buyer, very often an assistant of his would swap the piglet for a cat and put it in the Hessian sack that they put it in and tied a knot in it and gave it to the buyer. I think the knot was important. And so, of course, the buyer would pay for a piglet and would get some feral, grotty looking cat in the bottom of his sack and wouldn't find out the secret until he got it home, opened the bag and let the cat out and found out there wasn't a piglet. So that's the origin of that. I like that one. Rather shrewd of the farmer, you might say, if you're being positive. Downright dishonest and cheating otherwise. So that's to let the cat out of the bag. And another one I particularly enjoyed was to jump on the bandwagon. And that phrase, you'll know its use and its context. That originates from the deep south of America. And back in the day, touring bands would play for audiences on the back of their wagon. And these were usually employed at political or religious rallies. And of course people would turn up really to watch the band, because you can imagine back in those days seeing a live band, as today, must be quite something. So the political speakers and the religious speakers would very often either arrange or do it underhand, would jump on the wagon while the band was playing to make their speech, so that they got this large crowd, because of course you can imagine once the band had finished the crowd would disperse quite readily. So the people would hang around and put up with the political or the religious speaker because they knew the band was going to start up again when he'd finished. So that's where the phrase to jump on the bandwagon originates. I like that one. I hope you do too. These are a wonderful bit of kit, the Kelly kettle, if you don't mind a little bit of smoke. Just a bit of old cardboard from some delivery or whatever. Maybe a bit of newspaper, some old wood. Stuff that normally is just rubbish produces hot water. It's a wonderful invention. A pair of safety goggles would have helped. That's probably not selling it very well, is it? I'm so blinded I've overfilled my cup. And now I'm going to compound the problem by putting my soy milk in and overflowing. Tea bag disposal? No problem, sir. Oh, yeah, overfull. Oh. Tea, best drink of the day. No one who has an allotment ever claims that it's a glamorous lifestyle. And if you look closely at this soil, which has had my allotment compost top dressed on it, you can see the thousands of little weed seedlings that are coming through despite the dry weather. So the two things that occupy me most on the allotment day to day are watering, because we had one day of rain about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago I think, and before that it was at least a month. So we've had no rainfall of any significant value, and all these weeds keep coming up. So watering and hoeing, watering and hoeing, and then occasionally a nice cup of tea. But this has all got to be chopped off. And then these little tomato plants, who are completely oblivious to the cold Arctic winds that are coming their way, have got to be cosseted and protected. Well, these are the two parsnip tubs, and you may remember, if you're a regular viewer, that I've put in some tubes, if you like, of sieved compost for the parsnips to grow down with a free root run and hopefully produce a conventionally shaped parsnip. And the seedlings were, or the seeds were chitted in my airing cupboard at home, and the one on the right would appear to be just developing some very fine weeds, although I think I can see parsnip seedlings coming up. But if I take you to this left hand one, which was done a little bit beforehand, I'm hoping that you can see the very distinct second leaf development of parsnips. So, and they're not all regularly spaced in those little holes that I drilled. However, there is some sort of form to them. So yeah, I'm rather pleased. Who knows what the future holds for my poor little parsnips, but I'm rather pleased that so far I seem to have parsnip seedlings that have developed, germinated and developed, and as those, let me show you, that's what I think is a parsnip seedling, that's my guess. And then regularly there's another one, and then another one, and so on. So as they produce their distinctive parsnip leaves that I can identify them, I will then weed the rest of the rubbish out and hopefully be left with a pot that's not dissimilar to that one. So I think that's so far so good. Very happy. There's another unforeseen advantage of growing your potatoes in pots. When you get a cold snap like we're about to have, you simply move them inside and protect them. Definitely the way forward. Well, I'm not going to be spending a full day up here. It really is getting quite cold now, and the wind is picking up to a quite significant degree. And this is why I think the British are fascinated and occupied by the weather, because we've had the most stunning April and part of May. The weather has been glorious, and here we are over the next couple of days. It's going to drop down to about freezing, and we're going to get some significant frosts. So you can never tell, you can never relax. So I've brought these Casablanca potatoes in here. I've put a piece of that polypropylene or whatever it is, plastic, over the tomatoes. I've put the same sort of stuff over the courgettes. I've covered the parsnips. I mean, I don't know, parsnips and carrots are both covered. I think they're fairly hardy, but you know, I'm so obsessive about growing parsnips and carrots this year that for the sake of 2 days keeping them covered, I'm not going to risk it. What else? No, I haven't covered any. Oh, the butternut squash down the bottom. I'm going to do those now just before I leave. I've closed up the cold frame so there's no air gap to keep the stuff in there protected. So I'm weatherproofing as much as I can with what I've got. And we'll have to see in another couple of days, and I'll let you know in the next video. So thank you if you've made it this far for watching. And it's hard to believe that the shots you saw of our walk yesterday to Tinton over the river and back the other side on the Offers Dyke path was in really, really stinking hot temperatures. And here I am now thinking I should have worn a fleece, but there you go. that's the wonders of allotment in Britain. So thank you if you've watched all the way to the end. You've done well. If you haven't, please do subscribe and hit the thumbs up button. And all being well, I shall see you again next weekend. Thanks for watching. Look after yourselves, and bye for now.